What is up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. I am Kelly. If you're new here, welcome. Today I'm going to get straight into this story about the creepiest guy I've ever met. This just happened the other day and it threw me for a loop, and now I probably won't go anywhere by myself because of this. So I woke up this fateful morning. I don't even know what day it was. I know it was like 2 or 3 days ago from today. But I woke up this fateful morning and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to the park. Because of everything that's going on right now, the world has been keeping us in our house. And I've been feeling like I am suffocating in this place. Like, I just don't want to be here. And me being a flight attendant, I'm usually working all the time. But I jacked myself up. I missed the trip. I ended up missing 4 days. I've been off for 2 weeks at this point. And I'm like dying at this point too. So I'm like, I'm going to go to the park. I went by myself. I took a book, I took my laptop, I took my camera because it was like a nature preserve, so I knew I was gonna see some cool stuff. But I ended up actually just like laying out on my blanket or sitting down on my blanket reading books, and then I took some pictures or whatever. But let me just tell you about this creepy guy. So I was already at the park for like maybe 40 minutes before he got there, and I was just sitting there reading. Like, I was literally just sitting there reading my book. That was it. I'm reading a book called The Relationship Goals, by the way. It kind of has the fact of the story, but maybe it doesn't. I feel like in this story, God was like really watching over me, because right before this happened, it was a part in the book where it's not more so about actual relationships as it is about your relationship with God. And it was like a part in the book where you stop and you talk to God about, you know, giving your life over to him and claiming God as your savior and stuff like that. So I was doing that just before this story happened. Like, just before this happened, I have done that. And so this guy, he pulls up. I was already at the park for maybe like 40 minutes, but he pull up and he get out and he talking to this woman. So I'm thinking maybe he know her, because then they both go into like this little nature preserve of the park. I was just sitting outside in the grass on my blanket, like under a tree reading. They go inside like the nature preserve part. I had on flip-flops. I wasn't going in there. It was just too much work for me. So then he comes back out maybe like 30 minutes later. I'm still reading my book, and he's talking to this family now. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe this guy is just like a lonely old man and he just needs someone to talk to or whatever. So he's talking to this family. They get in their car and they pull off. I reading from my book, but you know how like when you're reading, you're down here, but you look up to make sure nobody is like messing with you. As I look up, he is like staring at me, and I'm like, oh God, please don't come over and talk to me. I am the most awkward person ever. Let me just tell y'all that, because like, I am just not a friendly person. I wish I was, because I wish I had more friends, but just like, I am just not friendly. Like, I'm super awkward when people talk to me, especially if I don't know them. So he comes over and he sits down the weirdest way. I seriously thought this was creepy as heck. He sits down like this. Ugh. Excuse my creaky bench. I know it's crazy. So he crosses one foot over the other, and I don't even think I can do this, and I'm sitting against the wall. So I'm not gonna try to do that. We're just gonna go ahead and sit down. But he ends up like this. So he has like one leg over the other, like over the knee, but his leg is like flat to the other foot. Like, he was flexible as heck. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, I can't even do that and I'm trying to push it down. Like, he was flexible as heck, and I'm just like, this is the weirdest way somebody have ever sat down in my life. So at this point, I'm already like, oh, this guy is weird. So he comes, he sits down, and he's like, you're even beautiful all the way down to your pretty little toes. And I'm like, oh God, not this. So you can't see my feet, and I'm not going to show my feet, but my toes are not pretty. Let me just say that. Like, the polish of my feet are like cracked and chipped, and my feet was ashy because I was going out by myself. I wasn't worried about lotioning up, and I got like this white, you know what? We're gonna just stop talking about my toes altogether. But just know they were not pretty, okay? They weren't even like cute. Like, they were crusty with like a K. They were just bad, okay? So I was like, okay, this is weird. This is what I was wearing, by the way. So like, I had on this like long skirt. So I take my toes and I like put them up under my skirt. So now I'm sitting like sideways with my toes up under my skirt, because I didn't want him looking at my feet, because now I'm uncomfortable. So he was just like, you're just so beautiful, you're just so beautiful, you remind me of my ex-wife. And I'm like, okay, thank you, go away. Like, especially when people start to flirt with me, I'm just not that type of person. Like, I just am not. Like, I can't explain it, but I'm like, thank you. So he's like, yeah, you remind me of my ex-wife, but she's dead now, and started crying. And I'm like, oh my God, what the heck did I get myself into on this fateful day of just going to the park? So I'm like, and he's crying for like 10 or 15 minutes, or not minutes, 10 or 15 seconds. And I'm not like the comforting type. So I'm sitting there awkward as heck with my book in my hand while he's crying. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like, I'm so sorry. And he was like, it's okay, it's not your fault, it's mine, I killed her, and started crying again. So now I'm sitting here like, oh my God, did this man just say he killed his ex-wife? So then he keeps going, or like, then he like gets his stuff together. But at this time, I'm already like on guard now. I'm scared as heck, because I'm like, what the heck? I'm the only person like out in the park area, and then everybody else is like in the inside, like in the nature part. So I'm out here by myself, and I'm like, did this man just say he killed his ex-wife? And I'm just like scared at this point, but I don't know what to do. My phone is on the other side of the blanket, so like if I go reach for it, I'm gonna be reaching for it, you know? So at this point, I like close my book up, and I'm holding my book because if anything, I can defend myself in my book. It was thick enough, I was gonna swing it as hard as I could if I had to. So I'm sitting there, he pulled himself together because he was crying for like maybe 10 seconds. And I'm terrified at this point. Now I'm like, oh God, what did I just get myself into? Even though I just came to the park by myself. Like, I literally just like, I'm like, you know, it's a good day outside, let me go to the park. Like, that was what was in my brain in the first place. So after he's done crying or whatever, then he was like, yeah, I killed her in an accident because I killed her in a drunk driving accident, and the doctor, I killed her in a drunk driving accident, and the doctor, the piece of S doctor, had the nerve to say he wants to cut her legs off. And I knew nothing was wrong with her legs because she got out the car and she prayed. She got on her knees and she prayed. She got back up and got in the car. And I'm like, she did all of this while in a car accident. Like, why did she get back into the car? So I'm thinking maybe he imagines at this point, and he's just thinking like he wants her to go to heaven, so he imagined her getting out, praying, and getting back into the car or whatever. So he was like, yeah, that happened. And he said that she still had fluid in her lungs and they had to get it out. And this piece of S, like, he just kept cussing. And at this point, I'm just not comfortable. Like, I don't cuss myself. A lot of cussing kind of throws me off, unless I know you and I know that that's what you do. But like, he just kept cussing. He was like, yeah, he said she had blood in her lungs, she had fluid in her lungs, and this piece of S wanted to cut her open instead of, you know, putting a tube down her throat and sucking it out and all of this stuff. And this entire time, like, I was barely listening because I was still stuck on the fact that he just said he killed his ex-wife. Yeah, it helped a little because he said it was an accident, like a car accident, and not him actually like killing her. But I still was just thrown off of him saying that. So I'm like, oh wow, that's crazy. Oh wow, oh my goodness. Like, the entire time he's talking, he was like, yeah, the doctor wanted to cut her open, and when he cut her open, she had a heart attack, and she already had 4 heart attacks before. So then I'm just starting to feel sad for him again, and he was crying again. This guy was crying like the entire time. And he was like, you just remind me so much of her. This is her favorite park, and she used to go down by the water, and I made fun of her. And he was a white guy too, because that's kind of like part of the story. Because then he was like, yeah, I guess she's considered black, but if we put both our arms next to each other, we look just alike. And he was crying and crying, and I'm like, I don't look white. Like, not that anything's wrong with looking white, but I don't think I do look white. So I'm just like, all right. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. So he's talking, and he was like, yeah, this is her favorite park, and I was just so happy I seen you because you look just like her. He was like, when we were together, she used to dress sexy for me, like she did these nice things for me, and she used to think that she looked like a little slut, but I just think she looked so perfect. I mean, what guy doesn't like a little sexy woman? And I'm just like, I need to get out of here. Like, this cannot be real. Like, in my brain, I'm like, am I in a Twilight Zone right now? Like, is this a real thing? Like, I'm thinking I'm about to get kidnapped. So you wouldn't, and this would happen, I want to say he said it happened, maybe she passed away in May or March. It was one of the end months. But either way, it wasn't that long ago. So he's like, you wouldn't so happen wanting to go out with a lonely old guy like me. And I'm like, sorry. Like, what? Like, first of all, I don't understand why he even thought it was okay to ask me that. But I'm just sitting there like, sorry, but no. Like, I'm really sorry about your wife, but I'm just not interested in that right now. And he was like, it's okay. I just want somebody to hang out with me because I'm so lonely. And he just kept crying. And I'm like, oh my God, this is weird. So then, after that happens, he was like, yeah, and I had another ex-wife. This wife was white, but she had an alcohol problem. She just couldn't leave the bottle alone, and she died too. And she went down to Florida. Like, he gave me this whole backstory of his first ex-wife and how she died running away from him, and she like lived down in Florida. And when she came back, because he said something about the weather changing on and stuff, and she got sick and she passed away. But at this point now, because then he was like, yeah, so I have 2 ex-wives and they're both dead. When he said that, I was just like, I really gotta get out of here. So I'm like, you know, I was just about to leave. I've been here for a long time. I'm gonna just head out. He's like, no, just stay with me a little while longer. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I feel bad for him on one hand, but at the second hand, I'm like, I need to make sure I'm safe. Like, this is just not a good situation for me to be hanging out with a guy that said both his ex-wives are dead and one he killed. Like, I just am not comfortable with that. So I'm like, you know, no, I really have to go. And he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna just head out too. So he started to get up, but he was sitting, say I'm right here. He was sitting like right there. Like, it was some space between us. But as he got up, I guess he was sitting wrong, his legs fell asleep or whatever. He fell forward and he got close to me. So I'm starting to back up like this because I'm not comfortable. And he's like, oh no, it's okay, starting to crawl. I guess he was crawling forward to stand up. All I know is I was like, yeah, I just don't feel comfortable like being this close. And he was like, well, maybe we could just hang out sometime. And I'm like, dude, like, no. Like, I'm sorry I remind you of your ex-wife. That's super, super sad, and it's, you know, sucky. But like, I need you to go. Like, in the way he just kept talking about his wife, you know, and I'm like, dude, I don't want to hear any of this. While he's talking to him, I'm not really paying attention. And I'm like, this is so weird. Like, I really was like, once I got back into the car, I'm like, I'm never going to the park alone. Like, I don't even go out anyways, anywhere. The one time I choose to go to the park, that happened. And I'm just like, this is so uncomfortable. Like, this guy is weird. I just want to leave this story with, first of all, don't leave the house unless you have something to protect yourself with, because that was like super scary and I had nothing. But second of all, don't go anywhere alone, especially if you're a girl, because that sucked. Like, that was the scariest. Like, I've never been in anything else, but that was the scariest point I've ever been. That was the scariest part of my life. Like, no, that was the scariest experience I've ever had, and I hope that I never ever have to go through anything like that again. I'm sad because I wish I could go to the park alone, but that guy was too creepy. He scared me away from it completely. I'm just gonna have to stay in the house from here on out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and peace out.